This is purely a journalistic point of view. Nothing more has been said in this video other than that of which has been reported by various media sources and backed up with sources seen at the end of this video.
Hey WrestleManiacs, just before you watch part 2, make sure you've watched part 1 of this episode by clicking the link in the description below. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It's become known as one of the biggest debacles in television history, but it began as an ambitious idea mixing Americans' passion for football with the sports entertainment magic of the World Wrestling Federation. What became known as the XFL started under the auspices of entertainment Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol and featured a motley crew of football players, each with their own amazing stories. While the XFL failed miserably, costing the WWF and NBC each a reported $35 million loss, its legacy is still felt today. Join us now as Behind the Titantron examines This Was the XFL. Although an argument can be made that the XFL improved its quality of play, NBC executives felt something drastic had to be done to draw an audience. If the play on the field couldn't be improved, perhaps Vince McMahon could up the league's entertainment aspects. At the end of Week 5's game, Jim Ross announced a game changer for the next week and a blatant publicity stunt. Over the next week, fans learned the XFL was going to take viewers into the cheerleaders' locker room. Naturally, anyone familiar with standards and practices knew NBC could show nothing more than eye-straining nudity. During halftime, the fans were treated to a boring bait and switch when the cameraman got knocked out and proceeded to dream of various encounters with the XFL cheerleaders. The segment was a complete disaster and did nothing to help the XFL. As feared, March proved even worse, with the NCAA March Madness tournament eating away at what little remained of the XFL's ratings. The XFL hit a new low as Week 7's game scored a 1.6 rating, trying or breaking the record for the lowest rated show in primetime history. Since NBC had guaranteed a 4.5 rating to advertisers, the network was losing more money as the weeks progressed. By the end of the season, there was serious doubt about the XFL remaining on NBC. Although NBC had signed a contract to air the games for at least 2 seasons, forces were moving behind the scenes to get rid of the XFL albatross. Eventually, Dick Ebersol was able to persuade Vince McMahon there was nothing to be gained from continuing the show on Saturday nights, or NBC for that matter. McMahon agreed, but the XFL was not dead yet. Vince McMahon still had a chance to air the XFL on UPN and TNN. However, McMahon became angry when TNN asked to renegotiate the contract, leading McMahon to end the agreement. There was still UPN, and while the network's clearance was low, McMahon was willing to rebuild the XFL from the ground up. According to Brett Forrest's book Long Bomb: How the XFL Became TV's Biggest Fiasco, UPN was happy with the XFL until the Warner Brothers show Buffy the Vampire Slayer became available, and UPN signed it away. Unfortunately, the cost of buying the show depleted any funds UPN had for the XFL. UPN offered to air the XFL if Vince McMahon cut SmackDown by half an hour. Not wanting to cut into his biggest revenue draw, McMahon refused, effectively ending the XFL. McMahon's dream of his own football league was officially dead. It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but consider the following evidence whether or not the XFL might have succeeded. The XFL was not the first football league to challenge the NFL, and the XFL had some things going for it, such as football fans' desire to watch the sport all year round and a network eager to feed this hunger. 16 years later, those involved with the XFL have their thoughts on why it failed and whether it could have succeeded. XFL quarterback Charles Pulleri thinks McMahon erred by attacking the NFL. The first mistake they made was when they started knocking the NFL. That's the first thing you don't do, is try to knock the NFL. This league could have lasted. It could have been a spring version of football. People would have come out as you saw in the first few weeks. The XFL suffered from a bad time slot, as Saturday night often saw the much desired younger demographic out on dates and or partying. Vince McMahon wanted to air the games during traditional football times, i.e. Sunday afternoons, but NBC Sports had paid over $1 billion to air NASCAR on Sunday afternoons, so the XFL was out. Although the XFL aired on Sundays on TNN and UPN, the two stations' audience was significantly smaller than what NBC could potentially draw, leaving Saturday night as the XFL's primary slot. While the quality of play was initially lacking, some believe it improved over time. Even the most die-hard XFL apologists would have to admit the team rosters weren't the creme de la creme of what was available. However, while the league consisted of NFL cast-offs and hopefuls, that didn't mean they lacked the desire to play. Many players saw the XFL as an opportunity to showcase their talents and get signed with the NFL. Players saw the XFL as fun. Football player Yo Murphy, who played in 1 Super Bowl and 2 Grey Cup games, mentioned, "When I got there, I was surprised about the money they were paying out. I think starting off, they made it so fun to play. They could have sacrificed and not paid the players so much, and I think the league would have been around longer. Guys would have fought to play in that league because it was fun. That makes up for a lot. As long as you pay your bills and take care of your family, the opportunity to play and compete in professional football makes up for a lot." To be certain, the XFL players, much like the league itself, were works in progress. But as Mike Keller, the XFL's Vice President of Football Operations notes, the plain fact was that the product was very good. We had over 100 players go on to play in the National Football League. That's a large number. That's quality players. One of the league's biggest stumbling blocks was the lack of preparation for team players. Mike Keller realizes it was a mistake. When you're a startup league, the coaches who are coaching have never coached together before. The players have never played together before. One of the mistakes, and I will take credit for, is we had a 4.5-week training camp, and for a first year league, it wasn't enough. We needed more time for those players who hadn't played together before and the coaches who hadn't coached together before to pull together, so when they took the field in the first game of the season, we were in mid-season form. We weren't. Dick Ebersol was counting on the product. I thought we were going to deliver good football. I don't believe in my entire career in sports or show business I was ever more wrong. All of us. We promised a lot. We didn't deliver. Some believe the XFL was doomed because of its ownership structure, as there was no clear leader. Tom Viet, Vice President and General Manager of the Orlando Rage, said in a 2017 interview, "Our partnership with NBC was the greatest boon to launching the league and probably the greatest distraction that caused the league to fold." While Steve Earhart, the first Executive Director of the USFL and Vice President and General Manager of the Memphis Maniacs, argued, "One of the lessons, it's never good to have a 50-50 partner. Someone has to be in charge." One last factor was Vince McMahon's adversarial attitude towards the media. After many in the sports media questioned the XFL, with some even questioning whether it would be scripted, McMahon gloated to the media after the success of Week 1. Consequently, things only worsened, and it would not be until the end of the season that McMahon realized he needed all the help he could get. Sadly though, it was too late. While the XFL was a failure, there was lessons to be learned. Today, the networks are experiencing the same sticker shock Dick Ebersol felt and avoided by turning down the chance to run NFL games at a premium. With NFL ratings down, some networks question whether or not it's worth paying to air the games. As for the NFL, they benefited from the XFL, primarily in terms of production. The NFL had adopted some of the XFL's cutting-edge presentation, features such as a Skycam, microphoning players, and providing more interaction on the sidelines. In a sense, the XFL served as a beta test for the NFL. Dallas Cowboys team owner Jerry Jones feels the XFL helped the NFL. I think these ideas have contributed to the success we have today. XFL business consultant Rich Rose believes the XFL was revolutionary as well. You look at the elements that came out of the XFL TV-wise. Skycam. You know how popular Skycam is. The interviews on the sideline and in the locker room and stuff. We had that access. That's commonplace now. As for the XFL, could it ever return? In a recent documentary, Vince McMahon discusses the possibilities of the XFL or something similar. Charlie Ebersol, who directed the documentary, commented in a 2017 interview, "Look, when I interviewed Jerry Jones for the film, he brought it up. And when I interviewed Vince, he brought it up. My dad's not going to do it. He's really happily retired. Vince is still on the road 3 days a week, producing 17 pay-per-views and 104 Monday Night Raws and SmackDowns a year. He's a madman. If Vince has put enough thought into it, I never question the validity, because you never know when he's going to walk into the press room and announce that he's doing it. While the XFL remains Vince McMahon's biggest failure, he and Dick Ebersol deserve credit for their bold endeavour. They were not the first men to pursue a vision of football besides the NFL, and it's likely they will not be the last. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed episode 28 and 29 of Behind the Titantron. I know it's been said countless times, but please guys, leave a rate, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this to as many people as possible. A lot of time and effort goes into producing each of these episodes, and we'd like to do one every week. So please show your support, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.